Hi guys, my name is Nonima Tigela. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I want us to talk about Ginida's case against accused number 3. How strong is the chain that he brought? Do you guys remember the first time these guys appeared? This was 2020, October 27. Do you remember? 27 October 2020, and Gininda, okay, not Gininda. At that time, it was on the 26th. There was a press briefing, and what we were told, Abu Kherinel, Beki Kele, that team, they were busy saying we have a watertight case, watertight case. And here we are as South Africans, we were waiting. We're like, we want to see these guys. 5 men are arrested for the murder of Senzo Meyiwa. We were all curious. We were like, what's this? We want to see this. Anyway, before we get into doing that, guys, please make sure you do not forget to like, to share, to comment, and most importantly, please make sure you are subscribed on the channel. Please make sure you are watching the videos up until the end and you are watching the ads that are coming through. When you are doing that, you will be supporting this channel financially and in numbers. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Guys, for those that are new, my name is Nonima Tigela and welcome to my Noni M podcast. Okay, today we are going straight into one of the most important questions surrounding the Senzo Meyiwa. What exactly did Brigadier Bongani Nicholas Gininda accuse number 3 of? He accused number 3 Mtobisi Mncube of something, of doing something. So we are going to be breaking down all of that today in this video. Please stick with me and stay with me and be patient with me as I break down what I think Gininda wanted us to believe. Okay? Yes, because when you put Gininda's allegations together, they create a very serious picture. But here's the problem: an allegation alone is not a conviction. Okay, so he has a lot of allegations, but these allegations, can they stand scrutiny, is the big question. And circumstantial evidence alone becomes powerful when the individual pieces actually come or form one coherent, reliable chain. So today we are going to pull that chain apart, and then you guys will make your decisions as to, is there a case here or Gininda wasted state resources? Let's start with allegation number 1. Mncube was allegedly one of the intruders, according to Gininda's findings after he did his so-called investigations. According to the state's case as presented through Gininda, Mncube was allegedly one of the armed men who entered the Khumalo house on the night Senzo Meyiwa was shot and killed. The state's reconstruction involved a group of alleged intruders entering the house during what was presented as a robbery initially. And that immediately puts Mncube at the center of the prosecution's theory. But here is the critical question that we all should have here in our mind. What evidence independently places Mncube inside the Khumalo home? That is one question. Not simply in Vosloorus. He could be in Vosloorus, yeah, but put him inside the Khumalo home. Not somewhere in the broader area of Vosloorus, no. Inside the Khumalo home. Put him actually, make sure that you put him inside that specific house at that critical time. You remember that Uzandile Khumalo said it was between 7:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. when the incident happened. So Mncube needs to be inside that house at that time. That is distinction that we needed. That is in fact an absolutely crucial distinction that is needed for the allegation to stick. Okay. Second allegation: Mncube was allegedly the shooter, according to Gininda's so-called findings. This is where the case becomes exclusive, Kesana, because you need to prove this. You need to be very sure of your accusations as a Gininda. The state's theory was that Mncube was allegedly the one that fired the fatal shot during the confrontation inside the house. Think about what that means. This isn't merely an allegation, okay, that he knew somebody. It's not merely an allegation that he was somewhere in Vosloorus. The prosecution's theory ultimately places him at the center of the fatal event, the alleged trigger man. But here is the question again that must haunt every serious examination of this case, what independent evidence establishes that Mncube was the person who actually fired the shot? Because the people who were inside the house don't know who fired the shot. Because identifying the alleged shooter is one thing, proving it beyond reasonable doubt is also something completely different. So, can Gininda's allegations actually prove that Mncube is the one that fired the shot, that fatal shot? Another allegations, there's a lot of allegations that Gininda, okay, accused number 3 has from Gininda, okay. Uh, Allegation number 3, the dreadlocks connection. Let's talk about that a bit. Gininda also relied on descriptions of the alleged perpetrators. One of the descriptions involved a man with dreadlocks. The state's interpretation was that this description corresponded with Mncube. Now, this is where we have a slowdown when it comes to that, because that description better be exactly what the people inside the house said. A physical description can be very useful, right? But a description such as a hairstyle or clothing does not automatically establish identity. The real question becomes, how unique was that description? Okay, hear me out. Was there other independent evidence connecting that description specifically to Mncube? Because the court isn't deciding who generally resembles a description. The court has to decide whether the evidence proves that Mncube was the person described. Now, here is the situation when it comes to the so-called dreadlocks. The people inside the house spoke about short dreadlocks. They said they come up to here. Even the drawings that were done, they were of dreadlocks that came up to the ears. That was that. Then the pictures they show, they claiming, in fact, Mncube says, yes, those are my pictures that I took on the 26th of October, and yes, that is me. He has dreadlocks like this, long like this, and they were plaited. They were long like this, guys, like these braids. They were long. So, and they were also plaited to the back. Now, if Mncube had plaited dreadlocks long, then it can't be him with short ones. Okay? It can't be him. It can't be him. There's no way. Moving forward to another one, allegation number 4, the cell phone and location evidence. Gininda relied on cell phone related evidence to place Mncube in Vosloorus area on the 26th of October. Hear me out. He said Vosloorus. Okay, he said he was in Vosloorus. Mncube admits to this. Okay, that yes, I was in Vosloorus at Mazibuko Hostel. That is not Kelly Khumalo's home care. That is a different address now, not the Khumalo address. The state's position was that this location evidence supported its reconstruction of events. But here is where the defense has fought back, because the cell phone evidence doesn't simply say this person was standing inside the Khumalo house. A tower can indicate an area or sector. It does not automatically provide a GPS coordinate showing exactly where somebody was standing. And that is why the interpretation of the cell phone evidence matters so much. The prosecution says location evidence supports the state's timeline. The defense says you cannot transform a tower connection into proof that Mncube was physically inside the house, and that distinction is very important. And now, according to the time frame that Zandile Khumalo gave, she said it was between 7:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. when the incident happened. This location that they are referring to, the state, is for during the day, around 3 o'clock, around 1, lunchtime. Yeah, I think lunchtime. So up until the afternoon, something to 4, past 3 to 4, he was that side of Vosloorus. And then this location shows his devices showing us the GPS is saying he also moves to Helderberg Road around past 4. And then by 5 o'clock, he was already at George Koch Hostel in Johannesburg Central. So I don't know. We will see. And then allegation number 5, the Kelly Khumalo connection. Then we came to another exclusive allegation. Gininda testified about a linkage between Mncube and Kelly Khumalo. And this became a major point of contention during cross-examination, because the word linkage can sound extremely powerful. But what exactly does it mean? Does it mean direct communication? Does it mean their phones contained information connecting them? Does it mean investigators found some form of association, or does it mean something else? This is where the courtroom language matters, because saying there was a linkage, it is not necessarily the same thing as saying they communicated with each other. And the defense pressed Gininda on that distinctions, and he failed dismally, if you guys remember. Yebo, yebo. And then allegation number 6, the firearm evidence. In fact, when it comes to allegation number 5, the communication situation, Ugininda ended up saying, you know what? They never communicated. That was that. And then allegation number 6, firearm evidence. That's another situation left. Gininda referred to photographs downloaded from Mnube's phone. Among the material discussed as a photograph depicting firearms, the state argued that one of those firearms appeared similar to the firearm connected to the murder investigation. But again, similarity is not identity. The critical questions became, was it the same firearm? How was that established? What is the chain of custody? What does the ballistic evidence actually prove? These are not side issues, they go to the heart of the case. So Ugininda had all those allegations against Umncube and more, but I wanted to just focus on those. Now, the state's overall theory is that when combined, the state's case suggests Mncube was in Phosphorus, he matched a perpetrator's description, he had alleged links to Kelly Kumalo, firearm-related material appeared on his phone, he was allegedly part of the group that entered the house, and he allegedly fired the fatal shot. That is a serious chain of allegations, but a chain of allegation a chain is only as strong as the weakest link, okay, as its weakest link. Now the question is, did Gininda present a complete unbroken evidential chain, or did he present collection of circumstantial pieces that still require critical gaps to be filled? Because in law there is a massive difference between this looks suspicious and this proves guilt beyond reasonable doubt. The real test is not whether the state's version is possible. The real test is whether it is the only reasonable explanation left after all the evidence is considered. And that is where this case continues to divide opinion. Now the question is, can Gininda prove what he alleged against Umncube? And according to what we see, he struggled and he failed dismally. What are your thoughts when it comes to these allegations? And do you remember any other allegations against Umncube? Let's have a conversation. Comment section. I'll see you on our next video. Bye bye.